Hello Topaz Studio users, this is Joe Jasper, and someone had asked a question about black and white point adjustments, basically the basic adjustments in Topaz Studio, comparing them to Lightroom or Photoshop, which is basically Camera Raw. So I'm going to compare taking a gray gradient like this, black to white, and comparing Camera Raw adjustments of that to Topaz Studio. So if we go into Camera Raw on the basic tab, we find our white points and our black points can be set like so using the sliders, and you can see that there's always going to be some white blowout if there's no information, and same thing at the black end. So 0 is 0 even when you try to recover it, and 250 is 250, and you can't recover any more than that, but the subtle shades adjacent to it are recoverable. Another method to do this is to bring up the shadows, bring down the highlights. You see there's still some gradient, mostly a fairly medium gray in between, with a white bar and a black bar on either end. A common thing to do when editing landscape may be to bring down the highlights, bring up the shadows, and then adjust white points to taste and black points to taste while watching the histogram and making sure you're not blowing anything. So what about in Topaz Studio? And we do the same thing. So in Topaz Studio I have the same gradient up, and we're going to go into basic adjustments, and again we'll see what happens when we play with the white point. There's all the way down, and you can see it does recover the grays at the white end, and here's bringing it all the way up, still leaving some black bar at the other end. Maybe not quite as harsh when we bring it all the way up as it was in Lightroom. And bringing down the black level. So fairly similar adjustments, just maybe a different degree of doing so. What seems to be fairly comparable is to maybe go halfway or so. And then of course we can do the same thing of bringing up the shadows, bringing down the highlights, and here we get a fairly flat gradient all the way across. And we can try the same thing of bringing down bringing up shadows, bringing down highlights, exercising a little more restraint this time, leaving a white bar at one end, a black bar at the other, and adjusting our blacks, deepening our blacks, and bringing up our whites, getting fairly close to what we had originally. So I think that there is a capacity for Topaz Studio basic adjustments to be used in a very similar way to the Adobe products, but the sliders may have a different sensitivity to them and perhaps go a little far at especially bringing the black and the white perhaps further in combination with shadow and highlight adjustments than we saw in Adobe products. So another way to adjust, of course, is to use something like a curves adjustment layer or levels or something like that, and adjust the white point and you can see once again, if there's no information at the black end, if it's 0, it's still 0. But we got everything else to be white, and the same thing using the black point of the curves adjustment layer. We can go so far with it, and we can adjust the bend of the curve. So let's compare that perhaps to Topaz Studio. So in Studio you use tone curves. And here the interesting thing is the difference in where the white and black points are pegged on the curve. If you go back and look at what I showed you. So here when we bring the white point down, you get this distorting color. I don't know if it's because of the magnification, but it shows you that you can be maybe a little more sensitive with it in Topaz Studio than in the others, so you got to be a little more cautious in how much you use it. And this white bar is more clean as well, so I think Topaz Studio can go just a little further than we were able to in Camera Raw.